This is Corey Willis with PPEI, and you're listening to the Diesel Podcast.
I'm Adam Blattenberg from Diesel World.
This is Dan, owner of Dan's Diesel Performance.
I'm Kaz from Diesel Doctor of Tennessee, and you're listening to the Diesel Podcast.
What is going on, Diesel Nation? We're excited to have you guys with us today on the #1 Diesel Truck Podcast on iTunes. Today we've got Ben Shadday from Done Right Diesel Performance on the podcast, and he's been a guest before, but today he's going to talk to us about his 7.1 liter Cummins engine that's in his race truck, his turbo 400 transmission. He's going to give some tips as well on things that he does as far as owning a race truck, driving it, that can limit his downtime. So the less downtime he has, the more time he can spend on other aspects of racing and his business. And then we're also going to get into a new venture that he has, which is really cool, where he's basically able to get newer diesel truck parts and be able to offer them. So if you're looking for a low mileage 6.7 Cummins engine for a swap, a project, maybe a spare motor to build, they've got it and they can ship anywhere in the country. So we're going to go into details about that. Before we do though, with the ODSS, it's been such a cool race season this year to see the times, the performances, the story all over the country of what these race teams are doing, the tremendous turnout that they're seeing at different racetracks. And they've got a couple more events before the end of the year. So coming up on September 13th and 14th is a Hardway Sunshine Showdown. And then they've also got Rudy's Fall Diesel Jam in October. So I want to encourage you guys, go check those out. Make sure and, go to them. The events are so cool because there's a bunch of enthusiasts, a bunch of people who love diesels just like you do. You can meet vendors, talk with your favorite racers, ask questions, get ideas for your build. So we want to encourage you guys to go do that. All right, let's get to the podcast with Ben and learn more about his race truck. Ben Shadday, welcome back to the Diesel Podcast. I think you might have been on the Diesel Podcast more than any other guest, but that's because you do really cool things at racetracks and and with trucks in general. So it's cool to chat with you again.
I was glad to be back.
This weekend, Scheid Diesel Extravaganza definitely dominates the kind of social media posts and market and the racing and everything. We saw your truck out there and wanted to ask you what it was like, this weekend, and obviously racing, how that went, and then, any thoughts that you had from, the show or the crowd or just meeting with other racers and companies.
It went really well, actually. The weather was textbook, which doesn't happen very often at Scheid. The sun was out. It wasn't blistering hot like normal. We had a great time. We ended up in the runner-up position. Team Firepunk took the win, and congratulations to those guys. They were really on a rail this weekend. But yeah, it was a really good event. There was a good turnout on both sides. We went, back and forth from the drag side to the sled pull side. We had some customers pulling over on the sled pull side. And it just was really, the atmosphere was good. The weather was great, like I mentioned. And I think that anybody who was there was having a good time.
It seemed incredible. I think that event is usually always packed and really exciting, and there's a lot of enthusiasts that are there. But from pictures and things we saw from the show and shine and in the vendor row area, and then of course the racing, which is what everyone wants to see, are these trucks go fast or pull really well. It seemed like a really cool event, and I know I was glued to social media for a while looking at updates and things like that. But there was one, I think you guys posted it on the Done Right page, but you're running a Turbo 400 in your race truck, right?
Yes, sir.
I think we chatted about it a really long time ago, but you've got a few race seasons under it, or at least one. What are your impressions of the Turbo 400 now that you've got some races under your belt with it, and what's it allowing you to do with your truck that maybe some other transmission platforms couldn't?
Well, it's a very solid platform. It's been around forever, in the gas world. But just the technology on the Turbo 400, I don't know that I'm going to say it's any better than any other transmission platform, but just the extra gadgets and gizmos that's already invented for the 400, as far as like an easy stage valve, which allows you to bleed off converter pressure to increase the stall of the converter. And that happens on the inside of the transmission. And then they have an external dump if you choose to run one that does something similar, but it drains on the converter return side. Here again, giving you a couple 200, 300, 400 extra RPM in converter stall. So instead of hard parts dictating all of that, you can adjust the adjustability through the tune-up, or the transmission tune-up is there. Converter technology is by far the most advanced on the 400 platform. And just, like I said, just hard parts, input shafts. And we've tested this already, like we run a Rosler transmission with a Suncoast converter. We twisted an input shaft, and we took it back to Carl Rosler, and he's like, "What are you guys doing? Like, none of my 4,000 horsepower Hemi cars are twisting input shafts." So he kind of thought it was a fluke at first, and then the very next weekend, Levon and crew take their transmission back with an input twisted, and he's like, "You diesel guys are amazing. I just don't get it. I don't understand it with you diesel guys." So we are testing, the limits of the 400 as well. And I think trying to run the diesel engine more of like a gasoline power curve is something that's going to keep parts alive with diesel transmissions as well. So, but it's a really cool platform, and we're not swapping them out like we used to. We have had some failures, but it's nothing been like in the past.
That's what I was just going to say, is the less time you got to spend on the transmission, the more time you can spend either doing other things or racing, or there's tons of other stuff going on, so it just kind of frees you up a little bit to focus on other areas. And
that's exactly it. Not only does it give you an opportunity to not work on it all the time, but how many times have you been to a diesel event and you see one of the fastest guys there, or something that could be putting on an exciting show for the crowd, and he comes up and bumps the beams because he's scared to death to cut it loose with his 48 in it, and have to swap another trans in it. Well, guys like myself and Firepunk and Brian Gray and all these guys that got these turbo 400s, if we get a buy run, we're going to hit it again because we want to get some more data from the track now. So it's more exciting for us not to have to work on it. We can make these test passes in front of fans that brings them to the fence. So it's a better deal for the whole industry.
I wanted to ask you about the engine as well. What displacement engine do you have in that truck?
Currently, right now, it's a 7.1 liter. It's not stroked or anything. It's done all through bore, and it's still the Hamilton solid block with the aluminum 4-valve Waggler head on it.
Nice. I know that. I thought I saw that hashtag, or I saw something on Instagram or Facebook, and I'm like, I've got to ask him about the engine, and I know it's been performing really well for you with how well you guys have been doing, with it and keeping the truck together, and it's just exciting to see the performance level of what these race trucks are doing, and then what you guys learn, and then I'm sure you're able to translate some of it or the principles of it to the guy who brings you your truck and is like, hey, I want to tow better, or I want to maybe go to test and tunes, or these different things. So it doesn't have to be this race truck build, because you've learned lessons there that you can apply back to daily drivers.
That's exactly it. I mean, an efficient engine is when it makes the most power. So you get guys that come in that want efficiency or to tow, which takes efficiency. And sure, you might not be running it at its full potential, but still an efficient engine is going to get the best mileage, is going to tow the best, is going to perform the best. So it's everything does translate, even if it's a guy that doesn't care to have all the power that his engine has to offer.
Now, what do you think about the new Rams? I know last time we talked about, I think 2017s, but I was curious your thoughts on these 5th gens.
We have one here. It's performing very well. All emissions are still intact on our 19. We've done some dynoing here in-house. Just last week was a pretty good mile marker for us. We took it over. It made 502 horsepower at the tires, and there is 0 modifications other than calibration work done to the truck. So obviously we need to get some feedback and get some miles under our belt to make sure the filter is going to last, and we're not plugging it up faster than what factory is, which is the goal. But we just don't have a ton of time on it yet to know what the capabilities or if the filter is going to live at 500 horse. So that's just something we're going to try to get some miles under our belt and report back with that later.
Is it a 2500 or 3500?
It's a 2500. It has the 68, so it was the standard output engine. So it's a 24-door short bed truck.
I've heard from a few other guys that the new 68 RFEs, they feel a bit different than the older ones. Have you noticed that as well, maybe with shift strategy or the response or just the driving impressions of it?
In the stock form, yeah. I don't know that I haven't had the pan off of ours yet to know if they've changed any hard parts. But as far as shift strategy, it does appear to me that it tries to somewhat stay out of the torque, which I think is going to help those. But it's not, it's not a high revving engine by no means, but it does appear that, like on tip-in throttle and stuff, it's going to downshift a little quicker than the previous models.
It amazes me how far they've come in 10 years. Just the 6.7, 68 RFE, and even with the ASIN transmissions. But just what used to be, if you wanted to make over 450 horsepower, you had to do X, Y, Z, where now it's just like the technology and what you guys have seen and the experience that you have, in the aftermarket is really making them make good power. You're not having to take anything off of it, so you can drive it wherever you want to drive it and, still be able to tow and just, in essence, lower the modification costs as well. If you're just getting a tune and doing that versus how it used to be done, it is cheaper, but you're still able to make good power and good torque.
Right. And even, I know we haven't touched on it yet, but like the interior of the trucks, they really went leaps and bounds on the interior, comfortability. Mine's got the big screen in it, which is really intimidating to look at. Hopefully you don't ever have to replace that guide, but there's literally everything on the touch screen. Cargo cam. There's cameras in the front bumper that show you the road view if you choose to use that. There's probably stuff I haven't even found yet in it, and I'm sure, but the seats are comfortable. They really did a bang up job on the interior of the truck.
I did a podcast recently with the guys from Complete Performance. We were talking about OBS trucks and back in the day how Ford had probably the nicest interior, like in the mid '90s and stuff. And
right. I
was joking with them, not anymore. I mean, they're all really nice inside, but you can't knock the Dodge interiors or Ram interiors anymore.
They needed to do something to catch up, and they knocked it out of the park, in my opinion.
I saw a picture, I think it was from Scheid or maybe right before it, and I love your race truck. Just the way it looks, the engine, everything. It's really nice. And I saw, I think it was in an Amsoil booth, and we get a ton of questions. No matter what topic we cover, is these trucks are expensive, whether they're new ones at $76,000 or they're older trucks that they love it. They love their 5.9 common rail or their LBZ or whatever it is, and they want to put the best product into that as they can, whether it's wheels, tires, brakes, transmission, turbo kit, injectors, but then also fluids and things like that. And being that you use it in your race truck, you're able to see it under extreme, I don't want to say abuse, but extreme conditions with the power and the torque and what you're using, where that truck's performing, but then also on your daily drivers. And I wanted you to just share a little bit about why you guys choose Amsoil motor oils and even other products for your race truck, your business, and for your customers.
Well, we started using Amsoil in late 17, and I don't know that we had a lubrication issue. We were just going through a little slump of what we thought we were having some engine trouble. So I made the change to Amsoil. I had another friend of mine in the shop that recommended it, so I'm like, let's give it a shot to see what's going on, what the buzz is about that. And we tried it. And so in 2018, we ran it. We had 83 passes on our engine that made over 2,000 horsepower every pass. And towards the end of the season, Amsoil came down and watched us take the engine apart. We didn't take it apart prior and knew what we had. We took it apart in front of cameras, in front of Amsoil, and there was bearing wear. There was a couple of the crank bearings were wore out, but rightfully so. They had 83 passes on them. There was no spun bearings. The cam could be reused. The pistons were in good shape. There were a couple pistons that had some ringland stuff, nothing to do with lubrication, but more ringland heat soak or EGT. I think got to those, and then that's when I knew that Amsoil was what I was sticking with, because I had not had that protection in a race engine the whole time I've been involved in this. And, not to mention just the loyalty and the help that they have. So anytime that we do drain, whether it's our street truck or our race truck, we have sample bottles here on hand, and we send everything in, and days later, just a day or two later, we get back the full report on that used oil that we sent in for the sample. So they look at ash content, fuel dilution. There's so many things that they research it blew my mind when I got the first report back. And I'm just like, wow, that's, that tells you the whole life of your engine. Is there bearing material? Is that, are you putting a bunch of fuel past the piston rings? And just the protection, it held up. And that's what I've not had my daily driver engine apart, but I have Amsoil on it as well. I send in samples. We get all those back, and it'll do the analysis just like if it was a race engine. So it's protection, it's peace of mind, and it's cheap. I know it looks like, you look up an Amsoil price and it's twice as the competitor. But on like the daily driven stuff, we're not just changing. I choose to change mine at 5,000 or 6,000 miles just because I'm OCD like that.
Yeah.
But there are people that send the sample in. They take a little sample and they'll send it in, and Amsoil will say, keep running it. And they spin a new filter on it, top off the fluid. And there's some guys that went 15, 20, or 20,000 miles. So if you figure that double cost up front, but you got 4 times the usage, it's a pretty cheap investment, in my opinion.
I think it goes back to the larger theme. Like we even touched on it a little bit with the Turbo 400, and that was, less time you're spending on the transmission you can dedicate towards other things. And in the racing world, it's like, the trucks have a cost, your time and parts and fabrication and data logging and all that stuff, and then you have travel and different things all over the country. And the more that you can avoid downtime or avoid failures, no matter what it is, that allows you to basically sustain it, to keep it going, to be able to, I guess, limit the stress in a way of going all over the country and performing. And that's something I'm definitely drawn to is not just the one pass or the one dyno run or the 2 of them, but like 83 passes.
Mm-hmm.
And not having to change a transmission in the pits and those sorts of things, because it's not just for the racers, but then also the crowd. So the more we can see Ben Shadday go down the track, we're going to sit there and we're going to go see again at another place, and we're going to be more involved. And I think it's just such a huge part, and I always like to know what goes into keeping these high performance trucks just up and running as much as they can be with the amount of power and torque and use that they're taking.
Right. Yeah, that's a lot of it too. And people get burned out too after a while. If you're swapping a transmission every round or your engine failed, most of the time when the engine blows up, it's not what you were doing then. It's 82 times before then. So we try to put ourselves in the best position to not have stuff like that fail. And if it takes spending $12 a quart on engine oil, but it gets us all year long, like, sign me up. I'm ready to spend $12.
Exactly. I saw something really cool that Done Right Diesel Performance is doing with FSR diesel out in Arizona, and I wanted you to explain a little bit of that to us and our audience, what you guys are collaborating on and offering the diesel community.
Oh, something cool we got going on with Mark and Fred out there at FSR. They're in Phoenix, Arizona. We put our head together about almost a year and a half ago now, and Mark and Fred have been involved in the side-by-side motorcycle salvage industry for some time now, and we're like, hey, we know a lot about trucks. You guys know a lot about salvage. Like, let's figure this out. So I went and got my Indiana's dismantler's license, which is a lengthy task. And now we're offering these. We shoot for a low mile, late model truck. So they're all OEM parts, and obviously 2 locations. So if you're on the West Coast and it's in stock in Phoenix, it's going to be to you in 2 days or less, or vice versa here on the East Coast. So we're working on getting our inventory built up, which we have quite a bit to offer now. But just we were hoping that the 2 different locations and the knowledge that Mark and Fred bring to the table on the salvage industry and the knowledge that we have here for the trucks. Right now we're heavily inventoried in like the 4th gen Ram trucks. We do have a couple Chevys. I have one L5P and a LML here as well. So we're going to get heavily involved in the Ford and Chevrolet market as well. But right now I would say our specialize is in the 4th gen Ram truck. And with programming being our background, our next step is I'm going to build a bench for these trucks, and we're going to offer modules flashed to the VIN or to the programming you need to keep dealer visits down. So if a guy needs an ECM or a body control module or any window module, any module that needs factory flashed, we're going to program these and send these ready to install. So a guy's not getting his buddy to haul it, with a trailer to the dealership. Once he does get the used module purchased, it's ready to snap in place and go. So that's I think that'll help out quite often, and we're going to strive to be the best pricing as possible. But I think that we're going to be very competitive on that.
I'm sure someone's listening right now and they're like, I need this part for a 2011 Ram 2500. What do you guys, if somebody calls you up, what do you guys have available to ship them?
Right now we have about everything. We shipped 3 engines last week, and 1 engine had 2,000 miles on it out of an 18 Ram. One other cool thing that we're doing is we're not getting your core back. We don't want your core. I don't even have room for your core. So we're pricing these engines and transmissions and transfer cases and everything with no core charge. So if you got a core buyer, that just takes off the cost of the engine you just bought. So
what they got me thinking of is swaps, and where the guys will want to swap a 6.7 into some vehicle. And it's like, you can sometimes find them out there, but they're high mileage, or, you're not really knowing what you're getting. But if you can call up and get a 2,000 mile 6.7 Ram Cummins engine, like it doesn't get any better than that. And you don't have to pay core money and return shipping and all that stuff.
Right. And, something else we do, we got a kind of a strict process here. So, the truck will come in, and the first thing we do is get it running. We get it on jack stands. We run it through all the gears. And then once we got a checklist on that. Once that's all done, and then it'll go into a different bay to where it gets dismantled. Once it's dismantled, all the parts will go into the clean rack, or they'll go into the dirty rack to be cleaned. And then once the parts are cleaned, and whether there's, say if it's a injection pump or even an engine, it'll make sure that there's a cover or tape over every hole, so we're not getting parts, dirt and stuff dropped down in the turbo or something of that nature. And then once everything is cleaned and protected, it gets put in line for the photo booth. And then the photo booth, that makes all of our pictures consistent. And when you see our pictures, it's not a picture of a part that you're interested in. It's a picture of the part. They're all authentic pictures, and they're all pictures of the part you want to buy, or it's in the auction. So it's not just a generic picture. It's the picture of the actual piece that you're buying.
That is so cool. There's lots of things that I want to buy, and I'm like, oh man, that looks perfect. And then I get, the box or whatever. I'm like, that didn't look anything like what I saw.
Right.
You know?
So, and it takes extra time, but I'm hoping that's going to separate us from the other guys that are just posting generic pictures. And another thing that we're doing, so if you buy, say, a drive shaft from us or transfer case or anything, you're going to get the hardware. We're not taking these bolts and throwing them in a scrap bin and getting just metal price for them. We're taking these factory bolts. They get put in a baggie. They get labeled what they were, and they get zip tied to the parts that they go with. So inner fender wells come with all the, the tabs and bolts and stuff, the drive shaft bolts, everything. I mean, it's just one less step for us to throw something away when that could really save the guy's day. Maybe he threw a drive shaft and he broke his bolts. Well, he's got a drive shaft, but he don't have no way to bolt it into his truck.
Yeah.
That's all the hardware shipping with our parts as well.
I think it's a really cool plan and program that you have, because I know there's a lot of hesitation out there. If you need something for your truck and you might find it for sale, but you don't know. You don't know if that's what you're getting. You don't know if you get this engine, does it even run? Somebody might say it runs. Well, you guys know that it runs. And
yeah, we actually video them. We'll keep them running. We'll take the oil cap off to video any blow by. So if there's ever any questions on a couple of the engines, the guys have asked for it, and we just email them the video, and they can see it. We'll show the VIN, we'll show it idling and tack, and then we'll come out and show them the blow by, the oil cap laying off of it, and it's just kind of a little bit of peace of mind, because that's the stuff that I would want to see if I was purchasing this engine.
Oh, exactly. That got me excited. It's because I know we do a lot of episodes with swaps or just different things people want to do, and they'll ask, like, after the episode, hey, do you know anyone selling this? Or, before you and I chatted, I'm like, well, you might find someplace online, but I don't know, what process they have or what they're doing to, get you the most information that, you guys have. So I think that's going to be a big hit for you guys.
I hope so. We're putting a lot into it, and I noticed that when I've looked for, used parts before, I just never bought confidently.
Yeah.
I'm hoping to bring that confident back to buying used parts. They are factory, not aftermarket parts. But I know that if I ever feel confident, I'm a little quicker to spend money if I know what I'm getting.
Exactly. Well, it's really cool to catch up with you, Ben, and like I said, kind of follow up on some other podcasts we've done in the past. I think you had just done the Turbo 400 last time we talked, so to hear what your impressions have been and what it's allowed you to do with your race truck and how you keep it up and running, and then this other really cool venture you have, that there's a big market out there for that, and just hearing the detail and the information that you guys provide, like I said, I'm sure that'll do very well for you guys.
Well, I appreciate you having me back. It's always good to hear from you, Patrick.
Don't forget, Diesel fans, make sure and check out the last couple races that ODSS has coming up this year. September 13th and 14th is the Hardway Sunshine Showdown, and then October 4th and 5th is Rudy's Fall Diesel Jam. I'm sure they're going to be incredible events, tons of great performances. Make sure and check those out. Till next time, keep the shiny side up.